Dear students, welcome to my classroom of Chinese history. Today I am going to discuss the various aspects of Chinese religion through the ages. Early and modern Chinese religion is a vast topic that encompasses the religious and philosophical traditions of China from the 5th century BC to the present. The three main philosophies and religions of ancient China were Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, which have individually and collectively influenced ancient and modern Chinese society. A book titled Paradigm Shifts in Early and Modern Chinese Religion by John Lagerwey provides a comprehensive introduction to the 8-volume Early and Modern Chinese Religion. It explores key ideas and events in 4 periods of paradigm shift in the intertwined histories of Chinese religion, politics, and culture. I would like to start with Confucianism. Confucianism is often characterized as a system of social and ethical philosophy rather than a religion. In fact, Confucianism built on an ancient religious foundation to establish the social values, institutions, and transcendent ideals of traditional Chinese society. It was what sociologist Robert Bailey called a civil religion. The sense of religious identity and common moral understanding at the foundation of a society's central institutions. It is also what a Chinese sociologist called a diffused religion. Its institutions were not a separate church, but those of society, family, school, and state. Its priests were not separate liturgical specialists, but parents, teachers, and officials. Confucianism was part of the Chinese social fabric and way of life. To Confucians, everyday life was the arena of religion. The founder of Confucianism, Master Kong, did not intend to found a new religion, but to interpret and revive the unnamed religion of the Zhou dynasty, under which many people thought the ancient system of religious rule was bankrupt. Why couldn't the gods prevent the social upheavals? The burning issue of the day was, if it is not the ancestral and nature spirits, what then is the basis of a stable, unified, and enduring social order? The dominant view of the day, espoused by realists and legalists, was that strict law and statecraft were the basis of sound policy. Confucius, however, believed that the basis lay in Zhou religion, in its rituals. He interpreted these not as sacrifices asking for the blessings of the gods, but as ceremonies performed by human agents and embodying the civilized and cultural patterns of behavior developed through generations of human wisdom. They embodied for him the ethical core of Chinese society. Moreover, Confucius applied the term ritual to actions beyond the formal sacrifices and religious ceremonies to include social rituals. Courtesies and accepted standards of behavior, what we today call social mores. He saw these time-honored and traditional rituals as the basis of human civilization, and he felt that only a civilized society could have a stable, unified, and enduring social order. In this paragraph, in one of the lines, I have uttered the word social mores. Instead of social mores, it could be social mores, M-O-R-E-S. Thus, one side of Confucianism was the affirmation of accepted values and norms of behavior in primary social institutions and basic human relationships. All human relationships involved a set of defined roles and mutual obligations. Each participant should understand and conform to his or her proper role. Starting from individual and family, people acting rightly could perform and perfect the society. The blueprint of this process was described in The Great Learning, a section of the Classic of Rituals. Only when things are investigated is knowledge extended. Only when knowledge is extended are thoughts sincere. Only when thoughts are sincere are minds rectified. Only when minds are rectified are the characters of persons cultivated. Only when character is cultivated are our families regulated. Only when families are regulated are states well governed. Only when states are well governed is there peace in the world. Confucius's ethical vision ran against the grain of the legalistic mindset of his day. Only under Han Emperor Wu did Confucianism become accepted as state ideology and orthodoxy. From that time on, the imperial state promoted Confucian values to maintain law, order, and the status quo. In late traditional China, emperors sought to establish village lectures on Confucian moral precepts and to give civic awards to filial sons and chaste wives. The imperial family and the other notables sponsored the publication of morality books that encouraged the practice of Confucian values: respect for parents, loyalty to government, and keeping to one's place in society. Farmers should remain farmers and practice the ethics of farming. This side of Confucianism was conservative and served to bolster established institutions and long-standing social divisions. There was, however, another side to Confucianism. Confucius not only stressed social rituals but also humanness. Sometimes translated this humanness as love or kindness is not any one virtue but the source of all virtues. The Chinese character literally represents the relationship between two persons or co-humanity, the potential to live together humanly rather than scrapping like birds or beasts. The inner pole of Confucianism was reformist, idealist, and spiritual. It generated a high ideal for family interaction. Members were to treat each other with love, respect, and consideration for the needs of all. It prescribed a lofty ideal for the state. The ruler was to be a father to his people and look after their basic needs. It required officials to criticize their rulers and refuse to serve the corrupt. This inner and idealist wing spawned a Confucian reformation known in the West as Neo-Confucianism. The movement produced farmers, philanthropists, dedicated teachers and officials, and social philosophers from the 11th century through the 19th centuries. So now I would like to ask a quiz regarding this. Who was the propounder of Confucianism? Confucius, that could be the option A, option B, Mao Zedong, option C, Gautam Buddha, and option D, Karl Marx. The correct answer is option A or 1, Confucius. Now I would like to give my students some ideas on Taoism or Taoism. Definitions of Taoism are controversial because of the complex twists in its development as it played its role in the long history of China. Even the coining of the term creates ambiguity about what counts as Taoism or Taoism. 3 to 7 centuries after they were supposed to have lived, Han Dynasty historians identified Laozi and Zhuangzi as Taoists. The historians postulated 6 schools of classical thought: Confucian, Mohist, Yan-Yang, Legalist, Taoist, and School of Names. They coined the term Dao Jia or Dao De Jia. Dao Jia means way school, Dao De Jia means way and virtue school, and came to identify Laozi and Zhuangzi as paradigms of the study of Tao Wei. Other texts were linked by their incorporation of themes from the two classics, including the Lezi and Bao Puzi and the Huinanzi. After it was linked to the interpretation of the Laozi by Wang Bi, and Yixing came to be thought of as a classic of Taoism. The Queen, Qin, had brought a sudden end to the institutions that generated the sophisticated classical period of Chinese philosophy. At first, their ideologies, legalist and Wang Lao thought, dominated and impoverished intellectual life. When the Han Dynasty began trying to reconstruct China's classical history, its historians coined the term Taoism, probably thinking of Wang Lao content. However, they implicitly fixed its reference by pointing to Laozi and Zhuangzi as exemplars. Soon, an operative definition of philosophical Taoism could be what Laozi and Zhuangzi taught, leaving details to interpretation. Other early Han writers, using their own interpretations, cribbed and copied from the original texts, but under Huang Lao influence, exhibited little further philosophical reflection. The products of this recovery have also come to be thought of as Taoist texts and include the Huayananzi and the Lizi and the Yizing. The operative definition, if we included these texts, would of course change. Ancient Chinese thinkers discussed mainly three parts of Tao: human or social Tao, Taya natural Tao, and great Tao. When I instruct you to put your hand on your partner's head, I am delivering some human Tao. Human Tao is typically enshrined in a language, which may include the language of planning. Human Taos are normative space-time structures, recommended possible histories. Natural Tao is akin to what we would consider the constancies of science. It is the ways things reliably have happened and will happen. Great Tao refers to the entire actual history of everything. Whatever has happened, is happening, or actually will happen in the universe constitutes the great Tao. Taoists, however, do not formulate these categories explicitly, partly because they may seem to overlap. A form of determinism, for example, would treat Taiyang Tao and Great Tao as identical. The laws of nature make only one world history possible. Common sense ideodeterminism would regard many possible world histories as consistent with Taiyang Tao. In general, however, it is best to think of Great Tao as simply the counterpart of Wittgenstein's all that is the case. The extended actual space-time world. One of the insights of the Zhuangzi, not as clearly reflected in the Laozi, is that human Tao is embedded in, part of, and consistent with both Great Tao and Natural Tao. Now I would like to tell you something about Taoism and Buddhism. Buddhism came to China at a time when the intellectuals were hungry for fresh ideas. But it arrived with massive handicaps. It was saddled with the Indo-European focus on an appearance reality, metaphysics, and epistemology, with approximations to concepts of truth, sense, data, experience, mind as a container of a subjective world, populated by counterparts of sensible objects. Propositional knowledge, representational belief, a belief-desire psychology, together with a logic-informed concept of reason as both a human faculty and a property of beliefs and concepts. The highly developed Buddhist arguments had little purchase on Chinese intellectuals, and the only available common form of discourse that could domesticate this alien system was neo-Taoist, abstruse learning which focused on the metaphysical notions of being and non-being. That issue resonated superficially with a Buddhist puzzle about the nature of nirvana. If nirvana was the opposite of samsara, the eternal cycle of rebirth or reincarnation, then was it a state of being or of non-being? Nirvana is the achievement of the Buddha, the expression of Buddha nature. So, the cosmology of this version of Buddhism, like that of the neo-Taoists, aided achievement of some goal. Realization of the puzzling nature of this state led to Buddhahood. Meantime, Buddhism came armed with a paradox that would delight thinkers of a Taoist turn of mind. The fabled paradox of desire. Rebirth was caused by desire, and nirvana could be achieved only by the cessation of desire. That meant that in order to achieve nirvana, one had to cease to want to achieve it. This argument informs the Mahayana notion of a bodhisattva who qualifies for nirvana but voluntarily stays behind in the cycle of rebirth to help the rest of us. Enlightenment could only be achieved all at once. This conclusion was also a consequence of the Buddhist view that the ego is an illusion. The Mahayana wing of Buddhism was the more successful in China because this implicit egalitarianism, everyone could be Buddha, just as everyone can be a Taoist or Confucian sage. Now I would like to highlight some of the points related to Buddhism. As one of the major religions in the Chinese society through the ages, Buddhism, a cultural system of beliefs and practices based on principles of compassion and non-attachment, originated in the 6th century BCE in what is today Nepal. It was brought to China by Buddhist monks from India during the later part of the Han dynasty. That means during 150 Common Era, and took over a century to become assimilated into Chinese culture. One of the key forces of Buddhism's success was Taoism, which I have already discussed. To help the Chinese comprehend Buddhist concepts, Buddhists borrowed ideas from Taoism via the Chinese language. Both Buddhism and Taoism benefited from this exchange. Taoists expanded their ideas about the cosmos and ways to structure their monastic orders. Buddhists gained a lexicon that made it easier to teach their tradition. Over time, Buddhism became a popular force in the lives of the Chinese, from the common people to the emperor himself. In fact, by the 6th century, Buddhism rivaled Taoism in popularity and political influence. It was during this time and over the course of the next 3 centuries that major schools of Chinese Buddhism formed. 2 schools that retain their influence today are pure land Buddhism and Chan or Zen Buddhism. Even in mainland China, where religion is often suppressed by the government, there are practitioners of these two schools of Chinese Buddhism. Buddhism in China, as is the case with religious Taoism and Confucianism, also underwent many changes throughout the country's history and was varied in its social and religious manifestations and philosophical beliefs. Most scholars think of Buddhism as many Buddhisms. In the so-called classical period of Buddhism in China, there were a number of schools of Buddhism that taught and promoted their own philosophies and meditation practices. The Huan and Tiantai schools, for instance, varied in philosophy, location, and political influence. The teachings of various schools influenced and were adapted by Korea and Japan. One of the most popular figures in Chinese Buddhism is the Bodhisattva Guanyin, the one who perceives the laments of the world, Guanxin. Having originated from Indian Buddhism as a superior being who aids the suffering of the world, Guanyin has become a key figure in the devotional practices of Chinese Buddhists and Taoists alike. So, these are the various thoughts related to Chinese religion through the ages. Here I have discussed the tenets or the references from the scriptures of Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. In these three religious ideals, we have found one commonness, that is, love for humanity and how to serve the human world. And all these three religions give emphasis on mercy and pity, though they have different connotations. Somewhere it is mentioned as nirvana, somewhere it is mentioned as how we can rule the society, how we can frame the statecraft with the help of the ideas by Confucius. Somewhere it is giving us an idea of the various physical and natural aspects related to Taoism or Taoism. I hope my students, they have liked this lecture, and here we have not only discussed about the Chinese religion, its various facets, but also we have tried to understand the Chinese society through the ages. Thank you.